Okay. So find the inverse. Switch x and y. So our f of x is y. So we're going to bring our x over here. And it feels funny to write that y in there. Now, what we have to do first is just normal of operations to get that by itself, the sine of whatever, or cosine of whatever. So I'm going to add the 2 and divide by -4. Not super picky about whether you know, what you do with that -4. Divide that -4 over. So you can put the negative out front. You can leave it in the denominator again. Not picky about that. Once you get that by itself, we're working into the y. So now we use the inverse. And so you can write it as arcsine, or you can write it as sine to the -1. You can pick what you like and stick with it there. But taking the inverse is what lets you move sine to the other side. And that's what cancels each other. So normal order of operations to get that guy by itself, inverse of sine, and then normal order of operations again, just kind of carefully. Because we need to subtract the 1 over and then divide by 3, but when you divide by 3, you have to divide everything, including that 1 that you bring over, which is something that was missed by a lot of people. So the -1 goes on the outside of that sine inverse situation. And then when we divide by 3, there are a couple ways you can show it. Sorry, let's keep moving this other problem out of the way. When you divide by 3, you can just divide by 3. Big fraction. It looks funky because it's like, you know, a fraction over a fraction. You can put the 1/3 on the outside of everything and have an extra set of parentheses. Or you can divide the 1 by 3 as well. So it'd be like a 1/3 on the outside and a minus 1/3 on the end. That first one was from test D. This is the test C problem. As you can see, super similar, but I'll go ahead and run through it. Change f of x to y. Switch x and y. And solve for y. So our first thing here, I guess it would be helpful if I wrote that y in there though. There we go. So we need to, again, get our cosine situation isolated. Then we'll use cosine inverse. Then we'll use inverse order of operations again. So the first thing I'm going to do here is subtract my 2 and divide by 4. And it is a -4. And again, I'm not picky about where you put that -4 here, or where you put that negative. The 4 should go in the denominator, of course. And now we use the inverse. Now that we have that cosine term by itself, in order to undo cosine and unpack that 3y minus 1, we have to use the inverse. So you can write it as arc cosine, or you can write it as cosine to the -1. Either way, that's what cancels that cosine. Can't divide by it, can't multiply it, have to use the inverse. And now you can do inverse order of operations. Again, you're going to add that 1 over, just like with the one that we did up top, and divide everything by 3. So that's ugly, but a numerically correct final answer. You can write it as 1/3 arc cosine of this mess plus 1/3, or you can write the 1/3 out front. Just make sure you have that extra set of